if you create in your company this customer-supplier relationship, it's a recipe for failure because they will not take ownership of this forecast.
We hear that AI could help us, but we don't see how. We don't see real use cases. Welcome, Florent. It's a pleasure to have you here because actually we know each other from real life. We have worked together when you came as a consultant from McKinsey, and I was at Thales in charge of the finance transformation, and you came to help us. But now we met in September, actually both together because of AI and AI for finance. I was there in AI for finance to give a keynote, and you are actually now you moved to Artefact as a partner. So can
Yep.
you explain this move and why now like you are also really focused on AI?
Yep. Yeah, sure. Actually, it was a great surprise to meet you at AI for Finance. So I spent almost 7 years at McKinsey from 2016 to 2022, working mostly on data, digital topics, and transforming some corporate functions, so procurement and finance mostly. This is why we met during one of these projects of finance function transformation. Why did I move to Artefact, and basically who are we at Artefact in a nutshell? Um, we are a tech company focusing on AI, data and AI. And one of our differentiator is that we bridge the gap between business and technology. The idea is for us to translate business problems and solve business problems leveraging data and AI. And you know better than me almost how AI is booming and what we can do with that. So the times are fantastic to work around this topic. We are 1,600 consultants in a little bit more than 20 countries. And yes, what we do is we understand our customer problems, business problems, and we help them solve them with leveraging AI. And today, the idea would be to share my experience working for a CFO in the transport industry, leveraging AI to do two things: traffic forecasting and finance forecasting.
Yeah, and that's really the discussion we had is there were AI is a buzzword, and what I hear from people is, yeah, okay, we hear that AI could help us, but we don't see how. We don't see real use cases. But when we talked, you told me, oh yeah, like I just spent the last month like doing the forecast of a big airport company, and I have a super use case. So when I ask you like, could we show it? You say, yeah, like let's do that. Of course, anonymized because it's a
Yep.
client. Uh, but like, what was the situation before? Like, what was the nightmares of the CFO before you jumped in? Can you explain the
So
situation?
yeah, sure. And before going into situation, the airport industry is really mixing a lot of financial aspects. You have a lot of big capex decision. Do I build a new terminal or not? Do I need to absorb enough passengers? Are there seasonality in my passengers stuff, etc.? So operationally, a lot of challenges, and operationally in the terminals. We all went through a terminal for the security, for the borders, for the duty free, all of that. You really need to understand what will be the people flow in your airport to make business decisions. And the situation was the CFO was basically unable to challenge, or not unable, but had some difficulties to challenge the CFO's budget, because it was a lot of variables, very complex exogenous parameters to take into account. And for him, it was not a tool to challenge in a negative way, but to bring a new light, a new color to the business and open discussion. Saying if you anticipate, you as a CFO of your business unit, you anticipate a budget of, let's say, an increase of 6%, and the model sees an increase of or a decrease potentially of few percent. Why is that so? What business discussion should we have together to ensure that we take the right operational business decision based on this? So it really mean not to replace people, obviously, but to engage and to challenge I would say, a more traditional way of looking at your business. I guess all the people around the call will know that forecasting, you tend to draw a line between few historical points and you move a little bit up, a little bit down, depending on events. So here it's a new way to look at your business with and to embed much more, I would say, parameters, dynamics that is very difficult to model on your own in Excel, for example.
So yeah, so you have an industry, and like now that we talk about it, I cannot imagine like how hard it is to like all of these factors, like you said, like traffic, but also all of the suppliers, the seasonality, probably like the price, the change of price, the macro impact, but also the constraints that you have because you have a limited of capacity in the day and what you can do. Yeah, like that's like for the CFO, really complex topic to forecast. So
Yeah.
how did you like explain like now like when you enter like okay what could you do there, how could you help them?
So I think the one very fundamental question when you talk about AI is, so first, obviously, what is the business problem we'll try to solve? But the second one is, oh, sorry for that. What data do you have at hand that you can leverage to feed the models? Okay, we used to say that no data, no AI. So it means that you really need to scan and to map all the different inputs that you can leverage for your modelization. And here in this very specific industry, but it's specific to this industry, but every industry has different types of data. You have the data that you own yourself, what we call first party data, everything that your system generates in your ERPs, financial system, etc. All the data that you can buy, what we call third party data, is basically in our situation it's called OAG data. It's the data regarding the passenger by a route airlines, from one airport to another, etc. And then you have the second party data is the data that you collect from partnership with your ecosystem. And having this mapping is really important, not only for finance forecasting, but just to know what will be the raw material that you will leverage to make your forecasting and to feed your machine learning models.
So that's actually really good because even though like I worked 15 years in finance, I never thought about like having like this structure of data, thinking, okay, like which data I have myself, so first party, which data I can actually buy that is available for everybody, but I just need to buy, and which data I could collect if I do some partnership with my suppliers or with some clients. That's already good because a lot of people are complaining about, I don't have data, I cannot start. But you're already saying first start to look at where you can collect this data.
And I talk about third-party data that you can purchase, but actually there are plenty of open source data. I give you an example a little bit further from finance, but when you want to do some image recognition for example, of fields, in agriculture, you have plenty of open source library that you can leverage to train your models on, etc. So having this proper strategy on the data acquisition is really a key step in your journey to AI, because it will enable you to go much deeper and much further in the complexity and the variety of input that you can feed your model with.
And so you then maybe if you like do like a quick before we tell the story in the middle. Yep. So what did you arrive at the end? How was the result of the project?
Yeah. So let me share very briefly my screen. Hopefully it will work immediately.
And we get some question in the chat, so we are going to answer maybe during the webinar or at the end. So please do ask your questions in the chat. Go ahead. Happy to answer during the webinar.
Yeah. So very simply, so we run different models. We did the traffic forecasting, so forecasting how many passengers will go through an airport in a period of time, and the associated P&L forecast, meaning that we went down 3 levels of the P&L at very granular KPIs. So for the passenger forecasting, we had more than 60 models anticipating and forecasting the 15 months traffic. For the finance, it's the number of model is much higher because, as mentioned, you have the number of business units multiplied by the number of KPIs, and you need one model for each, meaning that it's a lot to build and it's a lot as well to maintain. And in terms of KPI, we say 1 hour to refresh and to retrain the model. It could look like quite long, but when you compare to the situation before, when actually everything was manual with very limited granularity and the inability to go into as much detail and frequency, 1 hour is already a tremendous impact. And just to be super concrete as well, we built for the exposition of the result, what we have done is that we have built a Power BI dashboard. So we build a very robust, embedded in the financial BI suite of the client, the quite modular Power BI dashboard so that they can navigate, drill down, and have multiple views, etc.
So that means before, like how long they took to do this, what you can do now in 1 hour?
It was a question of months. You have 3 reforecasts a year. And the idea was for each BU CFO to come to the business review with as much detail on their P&L, etc. The thing is, you have multiple dimensions. You have the granularity, you have the frequency, you have the accuracy of your forecast. And the idea here for us was to improve all of that. So to give more granularity, more details in the forecasting, to be able to do that much more frequently, and to have business insight and trigger to business discussions with much more finesse. The English word is
detail.
I don't get it. Yeah.
And so, okay, how do you, now we saw the results, but how do you go from like the statu quo situation to where you are at a situation now where you can navigate thanks to AI?
Yeah. So I will go again. I will share a quick screen. Where is it? Sorry, my bad about this. I'm not used to Zoom anymore. But just the idea is everything starts by, I would say, 2 things. The first one is the business involvement. And the second thing is the data collection. When I say business involvement I come from a world in consulting where we are sometimes we produce a lot of slides that remain on the desk of the CEO. What I want to do and why I change is also because now I want to build stuff that are actually used by my clients. So you need business involvement to make sure that you have business sense and business logic addressed immediately, and that you foster adoption of this potential black box of data science immediately. In terms of data, it all starts by the data collection. So data mapping, what data do I have? So financial data, passenger data, macroeconomic data. Here it could be purchase data or open source data. Then you need to train not to train, but first to choose what model you will use. And here there is a lot to be said, because this is the choice of your model can have a significant impact on the adoption by the operational teams. And then you do the model, the prediction and the evaluation. What is very important for this third step is that the evaluation is really something that takes a lot of time. So just to give you a perspective, we framed with the client the project early 2024. We build the models for 4 to 5 months, and then we have all the question about industrialization, making it more robust, making it fully embedded in the systems, etc., etc. And what takes time, and it's not only on this situation, but what I observe with my clients generally, is it takes time to get the right data in the right format, at the right granularity, at the right level of quality, and it takes time to fine-tune the model. Here in this situation, data cleansing was quite heavy, collecting the data, understanding it, etc. The modeling by itself took quite some time because as we discussed, there are a little bit less than 1,000 models. So obviously you cannot do that overnight. But what is really important is to work hand in hand with the business to train and to make sure that your model is actually taking into account the reality of your business. Okay, we used a model called Prophet, for example. Prophet, it's an AI model developed by Meta, so Facebook, WhatsApp, etc. And why did we choose this one? Is because it has several benefits. First, it's really good at taking into account seasonality. And the second topic is that it has a lot of explainability, meaning that when you introduce AI to very operational teams, you want to make sure that you are not building a black box that nobody will, trust. The trust is a key word here. You need your business team to be comfortable using this prediction and forecast on a daily basis in their operation. And Prophet has this trade-off of it might not be the most fantastic and accurate modeling model, but very good explainability. So it's very good to introduce. You have good enough results, and people who start to understand that AI is not magic, that AI needs to be educated, that you need to understand, change your data set to take into account real life effects of your data.
So here, what we learn as well is not only if a model is good and like can really well forecast your business, but also does the operation understand it, and like can you explain? And like you say, like if you have to do the choice, you need to have that in the balance, because like there is a huge part of acceptance and change management, and it's not only about result but about acceptation. And I agree, Prophet, if you read the documentation and if you also see the graph, it's just like seasonality, and everybody understands seasonality. Like you have a seasonality per day, per week, per month, and also during the year. And I think what I like with Prophet is you actually get a visual representation of the seasonality, which like even I think somebody who never did data science or never did finance will understand that maybe like somebody doing an ice cream shop will do more sales on a Saturday and a Sunday, but also more sales in warm months of the year.
Yeah.
So you also talked about the time it took for the data to be clean, but you didn't explain like how long it took. Can you be more detailed on that?
But I think more important than giving you a duration, because it really depends on the context of each company. I think what is interesting is to understand the steps that you need to go through to be ready to apply AI. Basically, so what I told you is, the first step is to frame the use case, meaning, is my business ready to allocate to dedicate some resources to work on this? Is my data, do I know what data I need, etc. When you talk about data, it's you need to make sure that you have all the data you need. All the data, what does it mean? The type of data, so we say finance, we say passenger, macroeconomic data, etc. You need to have the frequency. Do I have enough events? Do I have the same granularity and frequency? Do I need to rebalance my data set to make sure that it match my time splits? Do I have holes in my data? For example, we were using a type of data very specific to the airline and business that is not perfect, meaning that you have some holes in the data set where it's literally it's an empty column for a certain period of time, meaning that you need to treat this data. You need to first detect that there is a problem in your database, which is what we call monitoring and alerting. So you set up quality controls, automated quality controls that says, hey, Florent, watch out, this data set on this period of time, there is an issue you need to look at. Okay, so then you need to train your model or to arrange the data set to say, okay, you need to take into account that there is missing data, etc. So all of these steps are quite manual. It's sometimes difficult to automate all of this. But if you do it use case by use case, it takes some time. If you have an holistic approach in your company saying, okay, in 2025, I know that I want to do this use case in finance forecasting, this BI report for sales, this supply chain transparency dashboard, etc., then you can anticipate of this data cleansing because you know what data you will need. So you can engage in a parallel work stream saying, okay, we will need sales, finance, and supply chain data. Let's make sure that these data are ready to be used of high quality when we'll be ready to do the modeling. It's what we call foundation. It's called data governance. It's really related to your data platform. So a lot of concept. I don't know how the audience is familiar with all of this, but it's not. I don't want to give the impression that it's super complex. It's quite some work and different expertise, some data engineering, some data science, but having this global view will globally make you gain between 30 and 50% of the data science team time to develop a robust model. This is why we say that you need to invest in foundation, because once it's a one-off cost.
Okay.
Once you have ingested the data and clean your data and automate the ingestion, then you do some run activities, but then the data is always ready to be modeled and to be used for more advanced business-oriented purposes.
And so once you have the data and the models, you showed me like those output. So what is the output after for finance, for the operations? Can you explain how it is used by the business?
Yes, let me give you, I will share my screen again. So it's a page presenting some Power BI dashboards. So it's not the dashboard, I don't have access to the Power BI myself, and I sanitized the figures. But the idea here is to have, so traffic forecasting on the left, finance forecasting. It's really, I mean, if from what I understood, the audience of this discussion is mostly finance experts, so they might be very familiar with Power BI, ClickSense, Tableau, whatever BI tools. The idea is here we had a data analyst working with the business teams, okay, with the finance guy, with the CFO to say, okay, what are the representation that we need for this exact purpose of engaging a discussion, looking at what is predicted, looking at what is budgeted, what is reforecasted, and look at differences, gaps that could focus the discussion on, okay, maybe here there is something we might have not noticed in the business, or here there is a tendency from the macroeconomic events that will have a drastic impact on the frequency of the volume of, for example, for the car park or for security, etc. So these tools are really modular, and they are plugged on a database which compile all the results of all the models.
How often are these used, and in which context? Is it like just for the forecasting, or is it every day, every month? Who is using them?
Alors, my client and my team on a daily basis, obviously.
Okay.
And I think here it's interesting to have a product vision. No, we are not doing AI for the sake of AI. We are not doing mathematics for the sake of mathematics. We are doing AI, and we have a vision like a product. We want this product, this forecasting tool, to have multiple purposes and usage as we go. The first one was for this business review topic. Okay, so it was super clear. The key user are the CFOs. And it engaged. Now we have done the change management. We have embedded this tool in the ways of working of the CFOs for the business reviews. But obviously, when you anticipate, when you forecast the traffic for an airport, you can imagine that it has multiple impacts and multiple use. So the idea now we are it's basically the discussion I had with the CDO and the CFO earlier today is what are the new usage we want to trigger operationally in the BUs. Having this forecasting tool, what can it unlock? And it has a lot of implication on communication, marketing activities, staffing purposes. How many people do you staff on each day of each month, depending on seasonality, depending on the World Cup, depending on whatever event in the world. So very concretely, I would say it reminds me a little bit like GenAI. GenAI, everybody wants GenAI. Everybody wants forecasting, but then behind the spark, okay, what do you do? And you need to really think on how you transform your business processes, not only the finance processes, but your operational processes, to take into account these learnings, these insights. Because the more usage you have, the more value you will extract from the investment you have done on building this forecast.
So does that mean that today this initial financial forecasting actually like kind of grew inside the company and everybody now wants like their share of this, or how is
Alors,
it?
to be honest, not everybody yet, but everybody knows that it's live because it has been it's one of the key use case and the most iconic use case that has been produced, and not at the POC, proof of concept stage. This is something important as well. The idea was not to demonstrate that we can forecast.
Yeah, because often is you do it once and then okay, we have the
No,
result of
no.
one forecast and then we put it on the side.
The thousand model are in production, live, on a daily basis, etc., etc. So it's a really powerful tool. So the communication has been engaged, awareness in the company of what it can bring has been done, and now the use cases leveraging this one are coming, to in mind of multiple people, and this is a key role of the data team in this specific context, is to advertise and to acculturate the business to this new usage. Okay, we are not only a data team is not only supposed to build what the business is requiring, is obviously to work hand in hand with business, but also it's an exchange. As a data expert, I can tell you and I give you example of what you can do. As a business expert, you tell me what you want in priority, and then it's a fantastic loop that starts of different teams working together.
So now that we talked about like the results and also we explained like the data, you prepared also something about which model you choose, because you talked a bit about Prophet, but I think it's important to explain what type of models one can use. And I think nobody here is anyway like big data scientists, so we are going to stay simple. But I think there is also now, as we are evolving and it's easier and easier to use this model, I think it's important that everybody gets aware of what models are there and why you choose them, just to, I think, to get some ideas for their own business and that they can do after their own research on this.
Yeah. So we in these two situations, we use Prophet and LightGBM for the traffic forecast. We put really high level pros and cons, and as you mentioned, it's not a math class, mathematics class that I will give because it's way beyond my level of expertise. But the Prophet benefits, as I mentioned, is that it's very, very powerful to integrate in the model the trends and seasonality, and the very fundamental point and why we chose it for finance is the interpretability. We did not want the CFOs and the target user to say, okay, no, it's a black box, I don't want to use it because I don't trust the figure. Because just to be honest, the first time we put figures in front of the business, we had some funny surprise, funny afterwards. But like significant gaps in compared to the budget or to the forecast, some not unrealistic figures, but figures that a non airport expert might not notice immediately. Okay, so interpretability for us, it was really fundamental to get them on board and help us understand where the mistakes could come from and really quickly improve the model to close these gaps and improve the accuracy of the models. The main problem with that is that you need to one model per time series, meaning that you have these 800 models that we need to produce. So it has some implication in terms of maintenance cost and orchestration of all the models. The light GBM on the other hand is different. It's the other trade-off. Okay, you can have less figures, less data points. It's easy to scale, much easier to scale, but it's more difficult to understand why a forecast has popped up. So you need to have more skills, more technical skills to get into the roots of the model, and meaning that you lose a little bit the traction with the business team.
Okay. Actually, we have really good question that I would like to pick. Somebody asked, because that's always the case with statistics, so I don't know how far we can answer on that. But how do you distinguish between correlation and causation?
The one I did not want to get. No, because to be honest, I think I could get an answer, but I'm not a data scientist by training, and I don't want to say stuff that I'm not 100% sure of what I'm saying. I know that is something that we discuss a lot on a case by case basis, to understand this. But I cannot answer this technically speaking. So excuse my ignorance, Robert.
But because Prophet, for example, is really is descriptive. It shows seasonality. It doesn't mean that you always will have this seasonality, but it shows you the seasonality of the past. So after I think you need to understand the business to know if yes, the weather has an impact, or if it was just pure luck that the last 5 years, always in August, the ice cream shop sold a lot of ice. So I think there is both inside. And but that's always a good question. Then there is something also I would like to pick so you have a lot of data points. You mentioned you have different models, but I think it's just you don't want to model all of the KPIs in one model. You want to model each KPI separately.
Yeah.
So somebody is asking, how do you manage this frequency and this change and fine-tuning of model, and how do you prioritize also all of this? Because if you have 800 model, you talked about orchestration. So how do you organize that?
But the orchestration. So first, the granularity of the models. It depends mostly on the data that you have. Sometimes you cannot model under a certain granularity or frequency just because the data you have do not allow that. The second question regarding orchestration. So now the tools that we have, it's not one person doing 800 models starting from scratch, etc. There are a lot of what we call boosters or accelerators that are pieces of codes that you can leverage to accelerate, for certain tasks or certain activities in the modeling, and that you can automate and generate faster all the code. The problem with 800 models is that you need to monitor the results of 800 model as well, meaning that you need to be able to have this monitoring and alerting system that I mentioned, making sure that if you have something that is blowing somewhere, you need to be able to detect it very quickly.
Okay. And maybe the last one,
there is a bit of engineering beyond the model itself.
And maybe the last one, I think maybe less finance, but more also societal, as it was impacted by COVID lockdown. What did you see in those models where you could see the effect of COVID and lockdown, and how did you also take that in account?
It's a very good question, and it's a very good question not only for this alors, for this project, it impacts everything that is based on the past on a period of time covering the COVID. Usually, it has an impact. Now, for travel, you can imagine it went from normal way to zero to almost normal, much faster than expected. This is an issue because you need to explain the model and to train the model to take that into account because it's a fact, but not to bias it to forecast too much. So either you choose period of time which right before, right after, but if you do that, the risk, and it's not in this situation, it's in another situation. If you stick to after COVID as a new normal to train your model, you get rid of, you might not have deep enough historical data. So then the question is, do you train your model on pre-COVID data only or not? But then it's maybe to not reflect the world of today. So you have some question. So this COVID stuff there is no one answer. It's always a challenge. My personal perspective, and again, I'm not an expert, but a data science expert, but the further we go away from COVID, less of an issue it's going to be because the new normal will be longer for historical data. But yes, it's always a challenge, in particular in an industry that stopped basically from one day to another.
So basically here, you will say like based on the understanding of the business, the people managing the model, so either finance or the data scientist, is maybe to separate the period or to even like have maybe some factors on how much you take in account the before COVID, the after COVID. And yeah, I think it will be the same, even if it's not COVID, but if it's a situation where you bought a new company or a situation where you launch products, like how much you use these changes in your model?
But very, very concretely, there was a problem with the BU in Mexico. So Latin America, I think it was Mexico. And the figure did not make sense at all. Okay. And the problem for us was impossible to understand. Not because we don't know our model, but because the issue was super business issue. It was related to a very operational. I don't want to give names of company, etc. But basically, a local issue with planes that could not fly. This is something the model cannot know because it's an external event. So this is why the business integration, the fact that people from the business are looking at the models is absolutely critical, because a data scientist alone could not have seen this, meaning that the outcome was a little bit awkward. And only when we talk to the business team, say, yes, but it's normal for 7 months. This airline company could not fly it, etc., which created a lot of problems. And and you need to train your model or to explain your model to take this into account only if you can detect it and that you have the business sense and the business rationale behind.
So basically, you change your model after when you know that, okay, you take that, or do you change the data, like you refactor the data? Is it part of the data?
No, you set up. Or? No. You set up the model. It's called correction, and you correct your data set to either deactivate a variable or to activate a variable to make sure that it's either cancelled or nuanced, etc. Because the thing is, you don't want to kill the effect. You want to nuance it because it's a one-off, but you want for further projection potentially to have this in the past as an event, because it could happen again. But you don't want to give it extra weight that will just make your bias your forecast.
Okay. And that could be used in stress test scenarios where you could say, okay, like this is the impact of this event. We have the history actually, and we could use it in stress test. Okay, really cool. So now, like, we talk about the models, the data, and we started to see like the output that we got. Like, do you have like a funny story of how they reacted once it was really working? Like, what did you see in their eyes, or what did you hear as words from the business and the finance team?
But you always have this first live demo, which was not a demo, which was a real life use of the models. and nothing worked. So you have you have a CFO that calls you not in the middle of the night, but late the day before the business review, and all the model crashed, and then you need to fix it. So sometimes we had technical issues, but like not related to the models. And sometimes because you have so many models, you don't test all the double clicks. You know, when you say that you forecast your PNL at 3 level of granularity, you need to imagine in the Power BI that you have level 1, double click, level 2, double click, level 3. And on tens or dozens of BUs. So you cannot anticipate one business review that will double click and double click and double click on one selected BO, and that there is an awkward figure. So this creates not funny situation, but something you need also to um, to take into account when you present for the first time, when you use it. It's not beta testing, but I mean it's sometimes some difficulties you are facing. But globally, the welcome was okay, not the most fantastic adoption immediately. You know, it's a common topic with AI. It creates a lot of anxiety in business team and operational team because of this feeling that it could replace some people. So here it's not the case, and there is no intent to bypass the CFO, for example. So no risk on this end, but yeah, it's would say it's progressive adoption, and less funny stories and more business stories.
This is actually somebody who is asking about ownership of the forecast. Like now that, oh yeah, like the machine is doing the forecast. Like, did you see a change in that? And how also do you solve that?
Alors, I really love this question because it's absolutely spot on the topic of adoption, and it's related to my initial thought that what you need to make sure for this project is that you need to have the data science team and the business team working in hand. If you create in your company this customer supplier relationship, it's a from my point of view and my past experience on this topic, it's a recipe for failure because they will not take ownership of this forecast. They will always say that it's an external view done by 26-year-old data scientists knowing nothing about the industry, and a model that is too biased to know better than as an expert of 20 years in the industry can do. So you need this acculturation and change to get this ownership. It's absolutely fundamental. Another way to look at the ownership, it's ownership on the data that feed the model. Because one challenge often comes the fact that the business team do not trust the data that you use. And when I was talking about creating the foundation, collecting the data, cleansing the data, etc., if you do it on your own, you lose an opportunity to onboard the business and have the business take ownership of this data set and saying, okay, I trust the data because I know that it's of good quality, the good granularity, etc.
And I think to finish on this topic on like making sure everybody has ownership. Somebody asked a great question. I think we talked a bit about that, but it's a question I always get: is how do you have the management on board that they understand the algorithm or like the machine learning? What did you do to make sure people came from a situation where we don't use AI to a situation where now using AI is just normal?
So two piece of answer. On this very specific context, the CFO is an engineer by training, and quite comfortable with this concept of statistics, etc. So here it was not a big deal, but it related to that. He was convinced, and he had a conviction that data and AI will bring significant value to the business in the coming years. So the sponsorship from the CFO, or for C-level, to me is absolutely mandatory because it's the only condition on which the business teams that are reluctant to adopt this topic will be forced or okay to allocate some resources to go on this journey. Because if you don't have the C-level support, what's going to happen is that, yeah, you know, it's not in my incentives. I don't have my boss doesn't tell me to, and everybody get defensive and nobody takes ownership of the topic. And for the population where they are less mature and less aware of this data science, it's like there is no magic recipe. Is explanation, Q&A, explanation, Q&A, manipulation of the models, get into the roots, explaining, showcasing, and answering questions. It's really a people topic. I mean, you will think that I'm phasing too much on this, but I mean, eventually there are people using it or not. So if you don't embark people and you don't design a change management approach, it will not work. One word about change management, the way I see it is basically you need to communicate a lot. You need the sponsorship. You need the training. So you need to explain what it does, what it doesn't do. Very important also to say the limit, to be super explicit on the limitation of your solution, because it reassures also the people. It's not magic. It doesn't do everything. It has some limitation that I need to take into account. And yes, then you need to have them review or to help them review their ways of working. I give you an example from another customer for the churn. It was a churn calculation for each contract of the company. We did the model. They didn't want to leverage our approach of change management. That happens. But then the question at the end of the model was, okay, now, but who will run the calculation? Which frequency? When do we give the churn to the account exec team? When would they use it? On a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis? What are the action plan when they detect that there is a high churn risk, etc., etc.? All of this needs to be reviewed to embed the solution in the ways of working and the daily operations.
So if so you had a chance to have sponsorship, and but how do you, if today we have 100 finance executives,
Yep.
how would you convince them to move to forecasting with AI? Or if they themselves are convinced, what should they say to their management to move on forecasting with AI?
Alors, this very specific topic of forecasting with AI, to me, is not a new topic.
Okay.
It could be a new topic for organization, could be a new topic for business people and business leaders, but it's not a new topic, neither in mathematics, neither in data science or computer science or whatever. There are hundreds, thousands of companies doing some machine learning to forecast sales, traffic, or finance, etc. So to me, the entry cost is going significantly lower. I mean, it's easier and easier to get to that, and there is no good rationale or solid rationale to not at least try. Okay, on this situation, we went for an MVP and an industrialization without going for a POC because of the maturity of the company. But you can imagine that you invest very little money just to do a POC, get your hand dirty on what it means, what it is, and demystify the concept, because it's not that impressive and it's not that complex. But you need to start somewhere. It's always the trade-off of those who wants to and those who do. Here you just need to get a data set, clean the data set, take an off-the-shelf model from some open source editors, and you just try to start to model.
I think, yeah, that's really inspiring to tell people first, like, it's not because it's a buzz now that AI is there that it's new. And I think showing companies, and that was also the goal today, that some companies have been successful and there is a process behind that. I think this is the first step, and the second is education and taking time with real results. I want to finish today with maybe getting a bit more away from forecasting and look more into the future of everything that is coming, because you with Artefact, you are directly into the weeds of seeing all of the new evolutions with AI. If we think about AI for finance, what do you see coming in the next years and what people should expect?
Yeah, very good question. So 2 years of Gen AI. I don't know how many years of AI, more generally speaking, and machine learning. What's coming in 2025 is definitely the hype of agent, AI agent. Basically, an AI agent is just a model that is able to trigger something, to trigger an action. And what we see a lot is companies, or what we see people trying to solve, and what we do and what we pitch and what we push to our clients is identify a process, a business process, a legacy process, or something which is actually not super process, but that is repetitive and that you do constantly. And everybody in finance is familiar with RPA, robotic process automation, basically invoicing, etc., etc. But there are some processes that are a little bit less structured, and AI and Gen AI will drastically improve this topic, but only when you have a good mastery, I would say, of the orchestration of all your models. So now the question is about AI governance and how you identify the key pieces of your finance processes that needs to be simply automated, like the old good way of RPA, versus where you need interpretation, moving environment, uncertainty, interpretation, etc. Meaning that generative AI will be a tremendous help to create scenarios or to propose a new alternative, etc. So it's going to be the Rise 2025. We will see a lot of discussion regarding how to modernize and transform business processes where we believe could always remain because too specific or too changing, etc. I might not be hyper clear because we are really in the middle of this today to identify for finance, for procurement, for marketing, what are these processes that we need to transform really in depth with AI and generative AI, and how we orchestrate all this model and agent in a secure and robust way.
So I think, yeah, now that you talk about that and we are closing the webinar, I think we are due for a second one to talk about all of this when also you have gone maybe through some use cases with your clients.
Sure.
Thank you, Florent. And where can people find you, talk with you if they have use cases they want to discuss? Where is the best place to find you?
LinkedIn is definitely the simplest one. So Florent Bernard, normally it's quite straightforward. You can also invite you to visit artefact.com, which is Artefact website, where you will have plenty of information and ability to reach out to us. And obviously, super happy first, thank you for this invitation. I really enjoyed this discussion, and the question in the chat that I had in front of me are like quite tricky. So a lot of experts online. So thanks everyone for attending.
Yeah, thank you, Florent. And I really appreciate that you were transparent about sharing all of this about this use case. Also, I appreciated the questions because that's also what made the content valuable, and that you took the challenges. And I mean, we cannot always answer to everything, but you addressed that really well. So thank you for this. And for everybody who joined, the recording will be on YouTube and also recording of a lot of other webinars. So if you love this, stay with us because we will have in the next weeks this type of webinars. Thank you, Florent. Thank you, everybody. And please, everybody, transfer this knowledge outside because that's how we are going to continue to increase the use of AI in finance. Bye.
Bye.